Hey guys, today's story is going to be about a campaign that got derailed from a single decision. So the players in this story are myself, my partner, and 4 friends who we'd been hanging out with playing D&D 5e and other stuff for a while. The 4 friends we'll call Jables, the Paladin, the Warlock, and the DM. Because I don't have the patience to come up with fake names beyond Jables. He's important to this story, and honestly, he's the reason the story will be funny. We later get joined by a Warlock's sister when Jables leaves. I'm the normal DM for most campaigns in the different friend groups I'm in, but the DM of this story wanted to run a campaign. I was okay with it, and I asked if I can use a character I've played, like, once or twice from the few games I've actually been able to be a player in. A gnome gunsmith artificer from the Unearthed Arcana playtest stuff. The DM said sure, and we arrive at the game, go around the table introducing characters, so it's an artificer, druid, paladin, warlock, and a rogue. I am also now informed that the DM just recently decided that this campaign would take place in the setting of some books I'm not familiar with. But I guess it's like modern-day Earth, but the government keeps monsters in check, hunts some, and makes deals with others, so that normal people don't know about monsters or non-human races like us. Gnomes, furbolg, elves, etc. And because it's modern day, my gunsmith is now just a guy who has a kinda loud gun and a group of people with guns. Now the thing about Jables is that he is impulsive, and he rolled up the edgelordiest human rogue ever. He saw his parents murdered by an eldritch cult, and saw some eldritch horror that turned his eyes red. Or something. Then he became an assassin, and he called himself
The Creeping Death.
Well, first session, we end up confronting an aboleth, and despite having very little context of how things work, and a lot of hostility from the aboleth, apparently what we were supposed to do was help the aboleth kill the dumb human teenagers who were dynamite fishing in its swamp. I say supposed to because Creeping Death proceeds to attack it. The DM afterward berated Jables for attacking it, even though it was a government ally, and it was its swamp, and we should have helped it kill those trespassing humans because that's our job and the agency we're a part of. To be honest, I'm not a murder hobo. I think things through pretty thoroughly, and if Jables hadn't started the shootout, I was about to, with the info we had about the setting and the fact we were monster hunters. Well, here's a monster that's killed some humans, and we don't know anything about its deal with the government until the DM told us after the fact. So we, a very low-level party, fight an aboleth. Most of us sniping from the shore because fighting a water creature in the water seems like a bad idea. Somehow we manage it. Pretty sure the higher damage of guns and the DM holding back did it. But Creeping Death gets covered in aboleth goo from its attacks, which causes you to take acid damage when not submerged in water, and can only be removed by heal or another 6th level or higher healing spell. We're only level 3 or 4. So we do our best to keep water on hand to constantly keep our rogue wet on the helicopter till a doctor can see him. We get back to our government base. There's these weird orc doctors that are going to treat Creeping Death. Thing is, they aren't necessarily rough, and I'm pretty sure Creeping Death talks back. They strap him to a table. He becomes even more rebellious. I don't know why or how Jables decided that he should hate the nurses and doctors treating his character, but this became the hill he wished to die on. He starts spitting at them and cursing them while he's stripped down. They put something in his mouth so he can't curse or spit or bite, and then he was strapped to a table, he's been gagged, and these people are going to apply an ointment to you that will keep your skin from melting off you. You would just let them save you and let it happen, right? What can you do? Well, Jables knew what he wanted to do, and I'll never forget his next words.
I crap myself.
We all died laughing. His act of defiance to somehow stick it to these medicine orcs was to crap himself. The DM is confused and trying to figure out what to do as chaos has erupted at the table. I'm pretty sure he yelled, "What are you doing?" in between fits of laughter. The DM decided it's going to be a roll to see if he can do it, in which we now have to consider the implications of whether he has to roll high or low. Because can you truly succeed if you poop yourself? Well, he doesn't roll what he needed, so he does not, in fact, poop himself. But he tried and argued for it, and so earned his new nickname, the Crapping Death. My partner and I swap out our characters for new ones since they don't fit the setting, and my artificer is now next to useless in a setting where technology exists for everyone. I modernized my favorite halfling bard. Anyway, next mission we go to a different state, and the government operatives working in that part of the agency, Geralt, the Blood Hunter, Triss, Yennefer, Ciri, and Dandelion, from the Witcher series. At first they were likely just a reference. However, they became less of a reference and more the real deal as time went on. The DM homebrews it that you go insane if you look at it, which leads to the wonderful scene of Crapping Death, in and out of character, gibbering nonsense, while also deaf and possibly blind firing an AK at the mouther. He's a glorious roleplayer, that Jables. Then things started to go downhill. Jables left us to go to the south with family for a while, and bad Wi-Fi meant we wouldn't even be able to get a Skype call from him. But he was fine with that, because he had actually had less fun with his character after he became the Crapping Death. Which, I understand. He made this cool guy character, and then got thoroughly humiliated on several occasions. The Warlock's sister stepped in with a ranger, and I missed the beginning of the next bit. But apparently in the church they meet a god, and the devil himself Asmodeus, just sort of chilling there, who tell us, "Yo, check out downtown." So we do. And this is where things start getting into the horror story. The DM decided Crapping Death ran off insane. We also met some Ifriti. Now, I occasionally roleplay act like I'm a Fey trickster, because why not? My bard is tricky. So I ask, "May I have your name?" Which I've had Fey in my game do, where you let them have your name, and now it's their name, and you can't say it. Think like Spirited Away. Everyone at the table now believes that you have the power of a genie when you know its name. I didn't intend that, but I didn't have the heart to correct them and say no. But the good news was that we now had an Ifriti friend, because he thought I had power over him. However, there was also bad news. The other Ifriti pulled out a deck of many things, because of course he did. And the Warlock got his soul put in a gem somewhere, because that's what happens when you pull from that deck. We go and try to find the gem, which it was apparently downtown, and a hoard of treasure, which cultists are keeping because they're trying to summon Tiamat. So we showed up, but the DM had Crapping Death as a bad guy for some reason, and he found the gem with the Warlock in it, and started trying to destroy it, while laughing maniacally. We ended up having to fight our old teammate, who is now boosted to be a challenge. During this, I texted Jables, "Hey, sorry dude, we gotta cap you right now. Pretty sure the paladin's gonna get you, but I'm gonna see if I can't make this quick." Our game was then interrupted by a phone call. It was Jables, because he wanted to step back in. Because if anyone is going to kill his character, it's gonna be him. He then attempted suicide, not by gun, which he had, but by shoving this large gem into his mouth and attempting to fall on his face with it. He failed and messed up his cheek. Trying to keep our friend alive now, because obviously, if the guy who thinks pooping your pants is a good idea thinks something is a good idea, you can't agree. The DM decided that even though we specifically call out non-lethal melee attacks to subdue him, my partner, now playing a monk, hits Creeping Death so hard, his head hits a wall and he dies. We argued we were being non-lethal, but the DM didn't care. And for some reason, Creeping Death's body just disappeared. This, and the Witcher characters, and the railroadiness, and the berating of how we mess things up had gone relatively unnoticed before, but now we started noticing it. Then the DM decided, well, the cultists are trying to summon Tiamat, so rather than choose for it to be a foregone conclusion or that the players can stop them, I'm just going to roll for it now. Because the DC is too high for them to actually succeed, right? Wrong. Nat 20. Keep in mind, this is all hidden behind a screen. He totally could have lied, but no. Now Tiamat is in the world because he rolled a die. You're probably thinking, well, what's wrong with that? Tiamat is a villain, and you're playing D&D. First off, we were level 5. Second, the DM had no plans for what could happen if Tiamat was summoned. He planned for the cultists to fail. He had zero plans for us to fight Tiamat, or deal with that situation at all. All the DM's plans were contingent on the cultists failing to summon Tiamat. So why even roll for it then? Well, it was too late now. He was committed. We kill the head dragon cultists and steal a bunch of treasure from the pile. These treasures turn out to be the vestiges of divergence from the Tal'Dorei Guide, which is the Critical Role setting book. The vestiges of divergence are magical artifacts that can be upgraded for those who are unfamiliar with them. And I don't mean some of the vestiges. No, I mean all of the vestiges from that book. Every single one of them. So now our characters were equipped with all of them, because the DM was trying to empower us and level us up so we could take on this sudden Tiamat threat. And this is where the game became particularly a slog. We start going to a bunch of places for reasons that I don't remember. We go to the Shadowfell and fight a Death Knight and a Demi-Lich together. We were still low level, and the Demi-Lich did his Howl ability, and we all dropped to 0. The Witcher women, who we are now told are all level 40, step up. They are Triss as a level 20 wizard and cleric, Yennefer as a wizard and warlock, and Ciri, who is a fighter. So, all the NPCs with us are ultra powerful. They wipe the floor with the baddies while we all bleed on the ground, and the DM ended combat after they were dead. We basically just rolled death saves until we succeeded or died. Apparently, the Witcher characters just stood there staring at us while we were dying, and never actually attempted to save us. And by roll until you die, I mean, quite literally, initiative had ended. There were no more turns. The monsters were dead. So we literally had to keep rolling dice until we died. So a good tip for all of you up-and-coming DMs out there. If the monsters are all dead, but players are still unconscious, keep initiative going. It might keep players from dying if their friends can help. So one of the first RPG characters I have ever made dies. But hey, it's okay, really. Triss has healing magic, so she resurrected me. But if she had healing magic the whole time, why didn't she just heal us to keep us from dying in the first place? My partner also died, but the DM decided that they must be punished, and by the will of the evil gods who made the vestiges she wears, Lolth and Tharisdun, they bring her back as a revenant. So now she has to do evil stuff for them, and the evil items torture her if she doesn't. At some point in this whole debacle, we got 8 levels all at once. It took everyone a little bit because of all the new abilities and health rules they had to do. For me, that meant I spent the better part of the next boss fight picking out spells and still having to level up, because going from low to high as a spellcaster sure the heck isn't quick. I showed up a little late to the next game because my partner was having a panic attack. I missed what happened at first, but we were now in Exandria, the world of Critical Role, and no one could tell me why. We were confronted with a dragon, and I was unclear as to why. So I tried to use diplomacy and appeal to its vanity. It worked. Then for some reason, Orcus was then taking control of my partner's monk, because Lolth and Tharisdun gave the control over to him, for reasons. So we fight Orcus, that is still possessing the monk, while my partner is sitting there bored because the DM is rolling for their character, and my partner has absolutely no agency over her character. To further this, the only way we could hurt Orcus was if we used radiant damage in the same turn. My bard has a paladin spell, Destruction Wave, which is a 5th level spell, and we also have a paladin. So it was up to our limited spell slots to get out the radiant damage for us to actually be able to defeat him. And by the skin of our teeth, we do actually manage to do it. We didn't have any more radiant damage left by the end of it. My partner just wanted us to kill her character because the DM kept torturing their character and took away their agency a lot. First it was just endgame judgments, then it was the gods, and now entirely with Orcus. However, amidst all this, there was some good news. We got to toss aside the evil Lolth and Tharisdun items. They were on the ground 5 feet from us, and we were in the desert, in daytime, and the DM described how they seemingly disappeared. We figured that they faded away to the evil gods as a deus ex machina. The DM then, under his breath, mentioned Crapping Death had them now. We questioned this, and he said that he stealthed them. He rolled real good and took them, despite the fact that they were right next to us, with us looking at them. I asked him since when stealth was actually invisibility, and you could hear the gears grinding in his head at the logic of my words. So we got the chance to shoot at Crapping Death until he escaped through a portal. Another thing that I greatly detested was that no long-term planning or big reveals were ever a surprise. The DM told us out of game that Crapping Death was now the chosen servant of Vecna, and had his intelligence boosted. He seemed proud, and we kinda openly voiced that it was getting less and less fun shooting at our buddies Rogue when he wasn't even here, and that it wasn't even the same character at this point. Then the warlock got teleported out of nowhere to the Temple of the Raven Queen, who was his patron. He did the thing that Critical Role had Vax do, where you go into the water and have a vision of speaking with the Raven Queen. They talked. She told him that Orcus became the controller of the Revenant Monk, which is whatever because we already knew. He asked how we could seal Tiamat away, and the Raven Queen responded that she didn't know. And that was the end of the vision. He had learned nothing. Nothing was accomplished by this, and now we are left with the question of where is the warlock, because we are in the desert still. And now he was apparently on the other side of the world, because the Raven Queen just had to use her mighty powers to teleport him there to her temple, so she could tell him nothing. There was a momentary pause as we all realized that we have no way to get him back. and the Raven Queen wasn't sending them back to us. Phones don't work here. We have no communication spells. And with a sigh, I asked, "Hey Trias, don't you have some sending, or scrying, or for sure teleportation?" The DM had actually not considered this option. He was legitimately going to just roll on, with the warlock being stranded half the world away, with no way of communication. She did have the spells, because why not? It's a level 40 character, and the DM can do whatever. So we collected the warlock and continued on our quest. At some point in all of this, we also started doing dream things, or getting teleported to test ourselves. But each one had to do with each vestige that we had. I ended up meeting Scanlan for no reason, and his symbol appeared on my head. The ranger also did a thing, and got a symbol representing Vexalia. She had never watched Critical Role, so she was confused as to the reference. Our vestiges all got upgraded. Everybody got forehead symbols, each representing different Vox Machina characters. Some of us even got 2. Unfortunately, the symbols served no purpose other than to let the DM do the voices of the Critical Role cast, as their voices spoke in our heads. We asked if they could help us seal Tiamat, since they sealed Vecna away. And no, of course not. They couldn't help, because they didn't know. So we ended up speaking to another god, specifically Asmodeus. I tried to give the DM an out, by suggesting we just do what the Vox Machina did to seal Vecna, since that's what we're trying to do. Nope. All these pop culture references, from The Witcher and Critical Role, and the gods themselves, and Asmodeus, even the goddess of knowledge, all tell me the same thing. What was done to Vecna couldn't be repeated. You must find a different way that nobody knew about. Which is frustrating when your whole quest centers around finding some way to do something, and everybody, including the gods, gives you a solid meh. But hey, the DM must have a good reason for not just copying Matt Mercer, right? No. Like I said, he discussed his DM plans openly. He had no clue how he would enable us to seal Tiamat. He didn't have a plan. There was no info for us to find or figure out. We were running around questioning every dead adventurer and goddess of knowledge when there was nothing to find, because the DM hadn't wrote it. I was frustrated. All of my effort and dealing with the tedious doldrums of this campaign and meeting whitewashed characters from something else had finally gotten to me. Bahamut and Asmodeus, as well as the Raven Queen, were all kinda just there and said, "Sup," and they didn't offer anything useful to any part of the story. They played no part. The spirits of Vox Machina were in our heads just to be the voices of the Vox Machina. The Witcher characters were there to Deus Ex Machina our party out of Doom, but sit on the sidelines and do nothing for most of the adventure. They were all just sort of there with no substance or importance, or even the humor that can come from references and inserts. At this point, my partner and I had noticed the DM liked to have a whipping boy to punish, which was usually the most reckless player. At first it had been Jables, and so Jables got his character manhandled and humiliated. Nothing they did was right, and they usually got the worst effects from enemies. When Jables left, my partner was the next most impulsive and reckless person. So now everything they did was wrong, and their agency was taken away from them bit by bit, and every decision they did had to backfire. And then the DM got to berate them for them making dumb decisions. We never finished that campaign. Lack of planning and a single bad choice derailed it more than any player could have. Not everything needs a role, but I mostly just wanted to share these stories because of Jables. It's a shame his character got turned from edgelord rogue into a sociopathic undead cultist, and then an evil insane mastermind, when he wasn't even there. But in any case, guys, that's the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed, and if you have a story that you'd like me to narrate, let me know. And as always, thanks for watching, and have a good one.